Good evening and welcome to this Sunday, May 30th edition of the Island Stats Cricket Show. I'm your host, Earl Baston, and joining me are co-hosts Dean Miners and Andre Doc Manders, as well as we have two special guests, and Dean will also be playing a dual role in this edition of former Cup Match Players Association members in Mr. BRINKY Tucker and Hasan Durham. First of all, gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for taking this opportunity to bring to the attention of the wider public of Bermuda more about the former Cup Match Players Association, one that Mr. Miners, I believe, serves as chairman or president? President.
Corn.
Well, Dean, let's talk a little bit about the history of this association. Actually, you know what? Let me go to Mr. Tucker just give us a brief history about why it's important for this organization to be around and what it means for former players.
First, I put a few words on paper, and if with your permission, I would like to read from them so I don't leave out anything. Is that all right with you?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, during the middle of July, Cup Match Players, namely Alan Douglas, Clyde Tango Burgess, Alan Richardson, Bergen Spencer, Arnold Manders, Clevie Wade, and John Tucker for our involvement in Cup Match, and it was held at Somerset Cricket Club by the Heritage Committee, and its chairperson was Dr. Randall Tankard. I was very honored because I was in the company of great cricketers and highly respected former Cup Match players. And prior to the presentation, I asked a member of the organizing committee why I was selected. And I was told it was your conduct on and off the field, because I had only played Cup Match in 1973. During the presentation, I asked the chairperson if I could say a few words to the large audience who was in attendance, and permission was given. And after expressing my appreciation for my award, I asked the president of both Cup Match clubs who were present what was the average attendance to both days of Cup Match. And my answer was approximately 10,000 paid admissions. I then suggested $1 from each paid admission to be put in a special fund for ex-Cup Match players that included groundsmen, scorers, etc. I received a very large applause for my suggestion, and to my surprise and disappointment, I was later told a few senior members of each club disagreed with my suggestion. I am not suggesting, and I was not suggesting paying ex-players rent, health insurance, or paying their weekly food bills. Consideration can be given to making monthly visits to their residence or making donations, taking their fruit baskets, giving them a taxi tour, organizing a social event each year for current ex-players and their immediate families to attend. Allow ex-players to flip the coin at the beginning of each Cup Match or every other Cup Match. If the game is played in St. George's, allow any ex-player from St. George's flip the coin. The umpire should be present during the ceremony, and photographs should be allowed to be taken. Did you want me to stop there for a minute?
No, you can finish it. You can finish because we're going to be talking with everybody about it, yeah.
Okay. I in my original document, I had names mentioned, but because of the respect for the people named in my paper, I don't want to call any names because I didn't get their permission to do so. But consideration should also be given to providing free admission to all ex-players, umpires, etc. Outstanding ex-players, officials, etc. should be invited to sit in the area where the president and the premier and the governor sits. And not old ladies who only watch one game of cricket a year. Put the players' names in the seat of the respective chairs, similar to courtesies, should be extended to them just as other VIPs sitting in their presence. The management of each club be allowed to select the invited players, etc. If contributions increase to such a degree, consideration should be given to making financial donations to close blood relatives of an ex-player for educational purposes, etc., proof must be provided. None of the money collected or raised by this committee should be used by the respective cup match clubs. In conjunction with the friendly societies, the committee should produce a book or booklet and give one to each current player, coach, etc., to read following their selection. They must sign a document indicating receipt of this book. The book should cover the history of cup match, the game's rules, the behavior of each player, their attire on and off the field prior to, during, and after the game, including respect for all umpires and spectators on and off the field. Consideration could be given to sell these books and raise money for the registered charity. And I continue, I suggest the management committee should comprise of the following: a chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, a chartered accountant, medical doctor, and a lawyer. Consideration must be given to have subcommittees assist the above management committee. The committee's service should be gratis. All committee members should receive 2 invitations for each day of cup match and all social events. The length of service should not be longer than 4 or 5 years in any one position. And I further state, I suggest meetings are held in the central part of the island, such as the city of Hamilton, Pembroke, or Devonshire. I also just suggest meetings of the management subcommittees are held at least once a month or every other month, depending on the time of the year. It should be the responsibility of the host cup match club to ensure the necessary funds are paid to the charity within 2 or 3 months after the cup match is played. This is a kicker. If the cup match clubs refuse to cooperate with this committee, I strongly suggest the chairman of this committee appoint a committee to meet with the main sponsors of cup match, explain the goals, objectives, and strongly suggest to them they continue to sponsor the match, and also to consider deducting $10,000 from the sponsor fee and make a public presentation to their committee prior to cup match.
Okay.
That was my document I submitted to the committee some time back.
Okay.
I'm ready for questions.
Okay. Hasan, how did you get involved in this organization? Can you hear us? He did pop out. Dean, as the I guess the president of this organization, you guys have done a lot of work behind the scenes over the last few years in organizing yourselves. What's been the response of the former players in kind of all coming back together?
Well, I think I want to go back to probably one of my first meetings that I had with Mr. BRINKY Tucker and the group. And Mr. Tucker actually went ahead. He read out his passion, his desire, and that's something that really brought me into this organization because, he spoke from the heart, and I resonated with that feeling of, he was a former cup match player. He had spoken to many former cup match players, and it just meant something. It was very, very moving. So as I said, amongst the committee members, you can actually see there was a connection piece to what he actually wanted to put forth in this vision that he had for the former cup match players, it was about the players. It wasn't about, and it's nothing against the clubs, but it wasn't about the club. It was about the players coming together, because a lot of the times our players, we have a camaraderie that is, you can't really explain. When all the players get together and we start to reminisce about those times. We have to also remember that cup match, prior to playing cup match, we heard these stories that in order to play cup match, you had to have certain characteristics, and those characteristics meant a lot because you wanted to reach that level of having those characteristics, which was discipline, the determination, the concentration. Those are the things, those were some of the characteristics, and you had to be a gentleman. So, of course, you know, in looking at what Mr. Brinky Take going ahead and said about giving back to those players that actually they are the pillar, they are the founders of the success that many of the players after them were able to be successful, because they those were the ones that set the foundation. And to be a part of an organization where I can now give back to them as well as helping youngsters, I mean, it means the world to me. Absolutely means the world to me.
Mr. Tucker, I don't think Hasan has gotten back on. Doc, you have any early questions?
No, just a couple. I'm glad to see that this has finally come about, because I was talk about that years ago about forming a cup match association. But I'm glad that Brinky and Dean has done this. Just got one question: is how do you become a member? Do you go on Facebook, email, or what's the criteria? And how many members do you have?
I'm glad you asked that question, Doc. The other day we had a membership drive. What we did, we asked everyone to actually go online and fill out a data, because we're trying to build this data. So far, we have about a total of about 15 former cup match players and officials have actually signed up. But we also understand that because we're in COVID, it's pretty difficult. And so we were trying to get the word out there as best as we could. We went to a lot of social media platforms, and of course, Earl, great friend, Island Stats was one that actually pushed it out there as well, you know. And then we had other social media. They helped us along, but that was one drive that we actually have, and we're going to continuously get these drives going to get members to give data to us, because once we get your data, we can actually put it in our system. We could send you emails. One of the main visions of one of the other goals that we actually have is create a website. So Doc, when you go ahead and click, or when your granddaughter or any student wants to do research on a former cup match captain, they can look up and click on your name, see how many years you've been captain. They could click on, see all your history behind you. So that's something that's why the data is so important. Not only to get the information out, to let you know when events are going to be, but it's so much more that we want to actually go ahead and do within this association.
Okay. Mr. Tucker, let me come back to you, because obviously this has been a passion of yours and a driving force of yours. But how years going by, how did the former cup match players get along with each other, or just meet up with each other? This has come about years and years down the road. We're almost 117, 100 or whatever, over 100 years of cup match. How did that work before?
Well, 50 years ago, I was playing league cricket here with Bummy Simons and Georgie Dyer and all the others. And the players were gentlemen on and off the field. Foul language was unheard of. And clubs had their own umpires. So some of them were obviously biased towards their respective clubs. But we went out to play the game and have fun. But in recent years, the poor one has deteriorated to such an extent, it's sometimes embarrassing to watch how youngsters, well, the young to me, they use their profanity around females. And, in the olden days, that it just didn't happen. And then in the olden days, if you had committed a crime, a serious crime, regardless how good you were, you didn't play. That how much cup match meant to people, the old timers in those days. You go to the club and you acted like a gentleman, but I can't say what happens today or tomorrow because I don't go to these clubs. I stay home. I paid my dues and I stay home. But hearing stories and viewing things on television, I just shake my head. I said, Father, have mercy. This is not cup match. And I'm a historian. I'm not a member of the friendly societies, but I admire what they have done. And I think they should be honored, given high honors for what they done many years ago. This everybody around the world knows about cup match in Bermuda. How much recognition does these friendly societies get? They give a trophy and then they tell goodbye, I'll see you later. I just think it's unfair. It's not right.
What we're going to do is we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with the former Cup Match Players members here on the Cricket Show here on IslandStats.com. We'll be right back.
Spring has sprung and it's time for the Friends of Hospice Butterfly Blast annual raffle. The butterflies are emerging bigger and better than before this year, and there's over $40,000 worth of prizes to make things more exciting. 3 Caterpillar raffles containing $1,000 gift certificates leading up to the main draw. There are multiple chances to win, so buy early and increase your odds of winning. So spring into action and get yours today. Check our Facebook page, Friends of Hospice Bermuda, for details, or call 232-0859. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
We're back. I want to try to continue the conversation that Mr. Tucker just brought up. A lot of times, Mr. Tucker, and this is why I started my sports website, is that people only hear about the negative side of our sports because that's what they choose to report. When if you don't go to the game and you could only read the negative side of things of any sport, that's what you believe and that's what you understand. And no matter what else is said, because there's 700 good things that happen in a game and one negative thing that happens in a game, but that's the highlight for some because they enjoy destroying our sports. And I speak about that passionately because it gets under my skin every time people are misled. You're misled because that's the only thing that you get, the information that you get. And it's not your fault, but that's the only information you get. And it's a struggle when others are trying to be so positive about our sports and our young man that you only hear about the negative side of our sport. But I want to ask you, because you did say, some of the behaviors. I've been challenged over the years that a lot of former guys, when they finish, they walk away, leaving it to inexperienced people or people that don't know the history of the club that they're representing. And I'm not just talking cup match, I'm talking league clubs and all. What do you say to the former players about kind of hanging around or get back around the club to talk about the history, to talk about the club pride, to give the young people, and obviously I'm not talking about the senior players now, I'm talking about the young people in the youth programs, give them the sense of history of the club. Give them a sense of what it was like, the challenges you went through in order to make it how it is today.
Well, first of all, when I was young in my early teens, there were a few distractions like they have today. It was unheard of, was not spoken of. And when I played with Western Stars in the 50s, early 50s, like I said, with Bummy Simons and Georgie Dyer and others, you looked up to them and they treated you with respect and they taught you, they encouraged you, and then I went to play with Somerset and the atmosphere was still the same. All the former players were always there to encourage you. And then when I left Somerset, I played with the Rangers and the atmosphere was the same with all the Rainers. I played with all the Rainers and for 5 years, you won every trophy that was out there, and I was never reserved for one game. And I enjoyed it tremendously and I worked hard, I trained hard. And I was a policeman and I also tried to set an example to the younger players like Terry Frey and David Stoneham and others, Randy Rayner. Randy is another case. But But you get that feeling instilled in you, and you want to pass it on. And unfortunately, today with so many distractions, and players, in my humble opinion, are not applying themselves, not training properly, and not being guided properly. I say that with tongue in cheek. I can't say that they're not guided properly because I'm not wrong, but their product, when watching them play on television, I said, gee, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And then I spoke to a coach of one of the respective clubs, and I'm not going to call any names or call the club name. And he told me, he says, Uncle Brinky, things have changed. He says, in the dressing room before the game starts, players are betting on marijuana, how many wickets they can get, and how much marijuana they want for it, and what have you. And he says, you can't stop it. You can't tell them to stop talking about it because they're going to do it. And unfortunately, when I was young, that subject never came up. So this is sort of distractions for younger players today, and it's very unfortunate.
Hasan, okay, you sorted yourself out. Here we go.
Yeah, just trying to sort myself up on Samsung.
Earl, I just want to. Earl,
Doc, let me ask you, Doc. The former players that played in your era, obviously when you guys see each other, well, it was against or with and all that. You guys seem to have a good relationship and a good bond, don't you?
Oh yes, for sure. Earl, a lot of you guys I played against St. George's, I played with the national team with, and when we Stars played against a lot of these players, at club games, we always, whether we win, lose, or draw, after the game, we always sat down, had a beer, and we would talk about the game. Most of the times now, a lot of the players, they don't hang around the club. They got a shower to just leave. But a lot of the players I played against, like Charlie Marshall, Clevie Wade, Noel Gibson, these guys, they were real friendly on and off the field. I had no problem with none of the former players, to tell you the truth.
All right, Hasan, you look settled now. How did you get involved in this organization?
Well, Dean had asked me to kind of come in and help out with it. We were trying to become a charity. So when I came in, we were in the process of either registering or re-registering. I don't know if when Mr. Tucker was around, if they were a charity or not. But we had re-registered. Dean asked me to come on, and I thought it was a worthwhile cause, especially after hearing some of the plight of some of the former Cup match players. And I thought it was an excellent cause, and I agreed to become part of it, and I'm glad that I did. And obviously we've spoken about COVID, how that slowed things down a bit, but at the end of the day, we have some really positive things happening. And as I said, I'm glad that I became a part of it, and I look forward to helping out with doing some of the positive things that the association is looking to do.
Right. Dean, obviously when you get involved, or any one of you guys, when you get involved in a sport, you want to play in the biggest game that it is in the country. And obviously for cricket, it's Cup match. It's also to represent the country as well. But let me ask, I'm going to go around and ask each of you, Mr. Tucker, who was your influencer to want to play Cup match? Who did you want to be like when you was coming up?
Well, I wanted to be the best, to be quite honest. But at the time, St. George's had a phenomenal team. I knew I couldn't play with the likes of Rupert Scotland and Bummy Simons and Old Fleece Hall and all those fellows, Tuppence Parfit. So I went to second best. I went up Somerset. And I tried until I got it. And during my adult life, after leaving Berkeley, I set goals. And that was one of my goals, to play in Cup match. After I played, I'm fine. I can move on to administrative duties. I like history, I thought I read a lot about the friendly societies, and same way with soccer. You know, I play with PAC, but PAC the best in Bermuda. And once I made the mountain top, I said, well, I'm done. I'm going to go on something else. But I set goals. Even when I got married, I set goals. I want a piece of the rock. And I was always driven in that direction, you know, and just being around outstanding players. I even had the privilege of playing with Tommy Richardson. When he stopped playing a cup match, he played with Western Stars. And I pick his brains to pieces, you know, because I wanted to do better than what I was doing, you know. And I ended up playing a cup match. I was one of the first to play in all three countries, do things like that, you know. And I joined PHC Club, and at one time I didn't run for president. I ran for secretary, became assistant secretary. I just wanted to get involved, you know, and I disliked nonsense, you know, stupidity. I frowned on it. But I had a good innings. I wasn't the best, but I tried my hardest to be the best when I played.
Hussey, what about you? Who was that person you wanted to be like in Bermuda's biggest game?
Well, I'll tell you, when I was coming up playing cricket, I started out at Warwick Club because I lived on Woodford. So, we used to look up to some of the players, Al James, Colin Blades, those guys that played at Warwick. But when I went to Berkeley, Arnold Manders was my gym teacher. And I just, as I was getting older, I kind of gravitated towards Arnold as like, not to say I modeled my game after him, but he was like my favorite cricketer. So I would, I guess it had to do with him being my gym teacher, but, and that's why I kind of favored going to Western Stars when I did. But I would say Arnold was my favorite cricketer and one of my biggest influences, especially after I went to Western Stars. He was the captain, and lots of times he was the captain and the coach. But at Stars, there were so many guys that influenced me as far as cricket and taught me a lot of things. So all you had to do was pay attention, because there was so many. You had Daff, you had Doc, Porky, Arnold, Spike. I mean, you can go through Gary Allen, you can go through the whole team. And as a young 18-year-old, which was how old I was when I went to Stars, I mean, you just had to keep your eyes open, pay attention. And, that's how I kind of learned or took my game to another level. And, everybody was playing cup match. And so, and that was my goal as well, was to play cup match, play for Bermuda, be the best cricketer that I could be. And, it just went from there. And I just, did my best, tried to get better, trained and, paid attention. And, things kind of fell into place for me from there.
Hey, Dean, just like Doc, they both liked Arnold but went the other way.
Now, isn't something wrong with that picture?
Listen.
Somewhere in the heart. I know that.
Yeah. So, Doc, let's come to you.
I'll tell you real quick, Earl.
Huh?
I'll tell you this real quick. When I was young, my mom used to dress me in blue, and that's all I'll say.
So, Doc, who was that person for you?
No, I've got a good one for you guys. Because my favorite one coming up when I was playing for Stars, and just like Mr. Takasea, my first year and my second year playing with Carl Bumby Simons, I mean, that was awesome. I was a youngster then, and just to see, and I knew he had played a cup match, but just playing under him for that year, and guys like Randy Butler, Mr. Tucker, Satchel Tucker, your brother, and a lot of more players that I played on the Stody Dormer and these guys. But Bumby Simons was one of my favorite players, even though he played for St. George's. But when I went to Somerset, when I looked at Somerset's team, I liked, I was influenced by Joe Bailey, John Tucker, and I would say also Reggie Tucker. a lot of these guys, you know, I went to school up Somerset. So I used to, you know, watch these guys train after school when I was supposed to be in school. But yeah, a lot of these guys I played with. But I would say Mommy Simons, he's in a class of his own, and I totally agree with Mr. Tucker about his captaincy, and you know him just learning again, his discipline. You know, he made sure that every player, not only myself, my brother Arnold, Roger Levra, you know, Greg Sampson, and all these guys, he made sure that each one of our players, along with Randy Butler, you know, they always made sure that we was comfortable.
Last but not least, Dean.
Yeah. My influence, I live right next to the club. So my chase, I mean, I was always down the changing room. But I think someone that really stood out for me at that time was probably Dennis Wainwright. Dennis Wainwright was an influence, but then the biggest one was Alan Douglas. Dougie was, to me, I mean, looking at I'll go back to Dennis. Dennis Wainwright was the most cleanest thing I've ever seen. I don't even think flies even touched him. You know, the handkerchief around the neck, the way that he walked, the way everything about him like was, as I can remember, I mean, everything about him was just gentleman. And then I heard stories about him. So it was just like, if I was to be, because I always used to have his Wiki gloves, I said, if I want to be like him, then I have to act like him, or I have to be a certain way like him. So that's how I started to get into this whole wiki keeping, you know, this thing. But then, like I said, once, you know, Dennis faded out and I saw Alan Douglas, I mean, Dougie was just like fast as lightning. He was quick. He was just to me, he was just everything. So I think Ricky keeping wise, he was my biggest influence. But then there was batting wise, I mean, Randall, I mean, Mr. Patience. He was a big influence, Charlie, Clevey. So I started to look at these guys and I used to study their style, their game. And Clay and I would be playing every day, all day. But it was almost all their mannerisms, the way that they walk, the way that everything about them. Because again, we were taught this thing about cricket as a gentleman's game and the way that these guys work. But those guys, the players, and then to be on the same field as them was amazing. Noel Gibbons. I mean, it was crazy. But one story, Earl, I'll never forget, going inside of Dennis Wainwright's. I don't know if Mr. Brinky Tucker remember this, but I'll never, ever forget going inside Dennis Wainwright's bag to get his wicket keep gloves. It was almost like he was getting ready to take a trip, going away. His bag was so neat. It was. I don't know how you got a bag with so many compartments. It wasn't even a case. It was just compartments. He had needle. He had thread. He had lima coal. Everything was like neat, and I've never seen nothing like that in my life. And so, like I said, that was an influence, and that was inside the change room. But of course, outside the change room, the way that the guys were in their deportment, and the way that they treated the umpires, and the way that they walked off the field, and just everything about it, man, was a really, really huge influence.
Okay. Well, we're going to take another commercial break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you guys to answer this question. How does it feel to be a former cup match player? And what was that atmosphere like whilst you were playing? And to kind of give inspiration to somebody down the road who has those ambitions, those goals, and those drives. So that's the question when we come back from this commercial break. We'll be right back.
Spring has sprung, and it's time for the Friends of Hospice Butterfly Blast annual raffle. The butterflies are emerging bigger and better than before this year, and there's over $40,000 worth of prizes to make things more exciting. 3 Caterpillar raffles containing $1,000 gift certificates leading up to the main draw. There are multiple chances to win, so buy early and increase your odds of winning. So spring into action and get yours today. Check our Facebook page, Friends of Hospice Computer, for details, or call 232-0859. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
Well, welcome back. Hasi, I'm going to come I'm going to come to you first. You know, in a lead up to your first cup match, obviously you had all these thoughts about what it would be like to play cup match. And then once you play, what is that like?
Well, I mean, so what I would say, Earl, just as far as the lead up to it, right? They have one. I don't think Somerset have one for like 13 years, something along those lines, where you had the Charlie Marshalls, Gibbons, Alan Douglas, Dean, Clay, Randall. These guys were going, and every year somebody would save them. Somerset would have them in trouble, and somebody would pull through with a century or 80 or whatever. And when I came along, it was more along the lines of Somerset were underdogs, right? St. George's, they had a lot of all-rounders. They had the cup for so long. They were confident. They always, they knew somebody would pull them out of the fire when the times got rough. So for me, it was, coming in, I was doing well in the league. I came in for my first cup match. We actually lost. That was 94. Lost my first cup match up Somerset. But coming in, I mean, to make it when the team gets selected and your name is called, I mean, there's no feeling like it as far as I've experienced, as far as the sporting, because everybody wants to play cup match. Everybody, that's their goal. Anybody that takes cricket seriously, that's their goal, to play cup match. And for me to actually play, I had a tremendous feeling of pride. There was pride in my family, my mom, my dad. Everybody was, it was just an overwhelming feeling. And for somebody that ate, slept, drank cup match, that was just like the most wonderful feeling in the world to actually get out there and play.
What about the nerves of the year you led the team?
Yeah, I mean, it was some nerves. It wasn't too many because I had played. I don't know. I probably had played over 10 cup matches by that time. I can't remember exactly how many I had played. So actually I played well over 10 because I think that was my second last cup match. So I had played, many cup matches. It was nervous because it was a new rule. As captain, I had been vice captain for several years, and that was the first time that I was captain. So it was a bit of nerves, but having played so many times, because it gets to a point where when you're first playing as a spin bowler, you're kind of worried. I don't want to get hit for a six. I don't want to this. I don't want to that. But after a while, I've been hit for so many sixes. It doesn't matter. So you can kind of take that out of your mind because you're not really concerned about that. It's not like somebody's gonna tease you because you got hit for a six after you played so many of one cup matches. I had taken 7 wickets in '96, so it wasn't the nervousness of performing or not performing. It wasn't that type of nervousness. It was more just I'm the captain, all eyes are on me, especially from my teammates. So if it was any nervousness, it would have just been the fact that I was the captain. But everything worked out. It rained, so it rained a lot that year, so it was a draw. But outside of that, it was a good experience. I'm glad that I did have the opportunity to captain the team, even though it was for that 1 year. I'm glad I had that experience, and to be able to say that as a cup match captain.
Well, Doc, I'm going to come to you because you were the other one cup match captain. But your first cup match going into it, obviously you had a big family influence of players that had played before you, and obviously you're now leading a charge of going west and all. But before your first cup match, what was it like for you?
Well, leading up to cup match, mine was a little different from Hasan. That was 1982. And Bermuda's national team was away at the time. They was playing for World Cup qualifier.
Yes.
And that's when Gladstone Sayer Brown was coach. Gladstone Sayer Brown was the captain.
Right.
And I remember that, very good because they was playing, played against Canada in the finals, and whoever won, went to the World Cup. And I think Bermuda lost by 20, 30 runs, and Canada ended up going. But to make a long story short, what it was, Stevie Lappin had done really well out in that tournament, making a lot of runs. And here I was back in Bermuda trying to make cup match, right? I played in every trial. And apparently it was going to be, what he talked was that it was going to be one chance. Joe Bailey retiring and Stevie Lappin coming in the team.
Right.
So, this was the big thing. So I'm like, okay, what about the other players that are playing in these other trials? I played like four or five trials, and I done pretty good in the whole, I say the 3 trials that I played in, I done really well.
Right.
I think I made a 50 and maybe some other runs, 20 or 30. So the final trial came out, right? I think I was on Joe Bailey's team. John Tucker was captain of the other team. So, still talk, one change, Stevie coming in, Joe Bailey out. So, I was talking to Ricky Bregman at the time. Ricky was doing good, I was like, something, well, if that's going to be it, well, I'm just going to go for it. And I ended up making 100, right? I ended up making 100. And then I came in as Stevie was retired. So, and that was the only change. But, leading up to that game, I didn't put no pressure on myself. I said, whatever happens, happens. That's good to show you, like, just inspiration for the younger players. So, that team's never picked until that most of the time is the final trial. That's what they're saying. But, because the final trial, you got to remember, that's what's fresh in the members. That's what's fresh in the Latin's minds.
Yeah.
So sometimes that final trial comes a lot. But, sometimes I don't believe in the final trial because anything could happen. Back in the days when I was playing, you had 4 or 5 trials, and you had to get off. And Mr. Tucker probably, you had to get off on a Thursday to play. What's the final trial was? And I said, I don't know if Dean remembers this, but or Hasan, I used to take a day off to be a Thursday to play, and used to get tons of people up there watching that final trial. So, and everybody was picking their teams. You got George Friday Bremer's got his team, someone else got that team, and trust me, it was difficult back then picking those teams. Like I said, St. George's and Somerset. So my first year playing, I was B1. So I think I got 42 the first innings. I didn't back the second innings because we had passed the score. But I wasn't even nervous, to tell you the truth. Not my first game, anyway. But it was a good experience playing with the crowd. You have to try to keep the crowd out of it. You got people, all around the field. Everybody comes. It's a holiday, so you got to be really, at your, put your best foot forward. But I would say that my worst 3 years was being captain of the team. That was from 1991. I say 1993. I was captain for 3 years. That was because my brother-in-law Perry Murphy got injured.
Right.
Messed up his knee. So I didn't think at that time was nobody, I guess at the club, to take over. So they, being Austin senior, around that time they had to ask me. But the stipulation there was that I had to leave Western Stars to go play for Somerset. That's what happened to John Tucker too. I think he had to leave Rangers. When he kept, he had to leave Rangers to go play for Somerset. So I talked to my brother Arnold. I talked to the Western Stars players, and they had nothing against it. But it was one of those things like leaving Stars was hard. But in the end, it wasn't a difficult thing for me. The only thing I remember having a meeting with him, and back in those days when I kept him a cup match, at the time it was 2 years above. Right. So your first year you could not lose that trophy. And when I was captain, I remember going to the meeting. I'm there with all these president, the vice president, sitting around, and they tell me, Mr. Manders, I know it's your first year cup match, but you need to keep that trophy. I mean, we need to not lose this game. I'm like, why not losing it? Well, so if I had St. George's in trouble, this is in the back of my mind that I cannot afford to lose this game because it will go back to St. George's.
Right.
So it's all a financial thing. You know, you have to try to be, and both clubs do the same thing. Like, you know, 2 years up. So if a game, say if you want, then it will stay there anyway. But if we lost, you'll go back to St. George's. So the club will lose money because it was 2 years above. Now I'm glad they changed it the year above. And you know, there's no more pressure on the captains because you know that's, you know, if you have a team in trouble, and I did have St. George's in trouble that year too. And you know, sometimes that's going through your mind, you know, should I do this if we lose? You know, so it's a difficult things, but I enjoyed my couple years coaching, but my performance being captain, it wasn't at its best because, you know, I tried to bet myself for the team needed me, you know, try to give everybody else a chance, and especially when you're trying to win the trophy back, it was a little difficult. But I can't complain because I played 15 straight years of cup match. I don't know how many players has done that. I mean, I played from 1982 right up to I don't know, I would say 1994, 95 or something like that. So I really enjoyed it. But my inspiration to the younger players is like, you know, enjoy the day. You know, like Mr. Taki said, you know, everybody's watching. You need to go in there, you need to perform. You need to go out there. If the umpire gives you out, you know, sometimes you think you're not out, but the best thing is to walk because you got so many people watching, you know, and you don't want to be on the field like then, you know, you're the person that not picking one, or, you know. So, you know, I would say, you know, enjoy it and put your best foot forward.
Dean, I'm going to say Mr. Tucker for last.
I'm just going to sum it up easy. I was a nervous wreck. That was basically it. The reason why is because I had so many. It was one of those things that the abolition of the slaves, the significance of the match, thinking about these guys, thinking about the cricketers with the Blazers, the significance of that. So I think that what made me really nervous in 1988, even though I went to the World Cup and I came back with a bit of confidence, but also at the same time, when I start to realize, because I mean, growing up right next to the club and what cup match means, it means a whole lot. It meant the world to me. So when to have the opportunity to play in it, it was just like a dream come true. But also, I used to think that cup match was the not only the pinnacle of my career, but I knew it was the next step to going to the national program. So it was almost one of those things that I had already played in the youth cricket for Bermuda, but then I knew if I made a cup match, I was starting to climb this ladder. But playing in cup match and seeing the people, what it meant, the significance of it, the history behind it, you know, you're the best of the 22 players in the island at that time. Remember, I took the gloves from Alan Douglas. My captain was Randall Smith. He's a perfectionist. My best friend, he played in cup match. His first go around, he didn't do as well. So, you know, I'm in Israel. I was like, because at that time I was playing for the with the youth team, and I kept saying to Clay, I said, "What was it like? What was it like?" And he was like, "Everything that we've ever dreamed about." But the intensity of it, when I first walked onto the field, I think it was late in the afternoon, and I was walking around the change room, and I couldn't stop walking around. And of course, you got Charlie and you got Neil. You know, you got Charlie, sit on, boy, sit down. And then, you know, you got Neil being Neil. What's wrong with him? So it was, I'm like, I'm nervous. And Neil said, but go home there, go somewhere, go for honor. So, you know, it was that influence. And then, of course, you're walking to the wicket, and then you got somebody like Doc shouting at you. Like, look at him, it's nervous. And then all of a sudden, everybody's chirping at you, and you're thinking to yourself, like, hey, but this is unreal. So, you know, a couple of times before I was receiving my first ball, I had to walk, you know, take a deep breath. I was like, okay, take a deep breath. And then you heard Doc again chirping, and then you heard everybody's chirping, and you're like, this is a nightmare. But that's cup match. But when you get over it, and then you start to play on, I think after that, when I became wicket keeper, I was like, yeah, I'm got all of you when you come to the wicket now. So that was my experience.
Yeah. And Mr. Tucker?
Yes, sir. I unfortunately, playing up Somerset, they like Doc said, the trial matches were like cup match. It was packed with people, everybody picking their team. I now forget a good friend of mine, Copper League, man. You hear him, he'd be shouting it from the concrete stage. Please. Oh man, he's accurate all over Somerset cricket field. And nice chap. But I got used to work in the Western Corners, playing with PHC in the Central Corners, and playing in the Governor's Cup. Some of these fellas might not remember the Governor's Cup, but nevertheless, I had the honor of playing there. And we stayed at Holiday Inns, and it was open. But Darrell and I were both sergeants at Hamilton Station, and he was the skipper in George's. And 2 nights before the game, he came to me. He says, "Match." I said, "But don't miss one," well, because I knew I was open bowling. I said, "You could do what you like, but don't miss one." So game time, I was relaxed because I was determined to get rid of him. In the 3rd ball of my first over in cup match, he edged one, and who took it? John Tucker took it in slips. I was elated. I walked him off the field, put my arms around his shoulder, and I said, "Well, you won't get this one, Bill." He hit a duck. And we've been best of friends ever since. That was 1973. We've been best of friends ever since. That's something I'll never forget.
Great. Well, we're going to take our final commercial break, and when we come back, we want to talk more about this committee of former players. We'll be right back.
Spring has sprung, and it's time for the Friends of Hospice Butterfly Blast annual raffle. The butterflies are emerging bigger and better than before this year, and there's over $40,000 worth of prizes to make things more exciting. 3 Caterpillar raffles containing $1,000 gift certificates leading up to the main draw. There are multiple chances to win, so buy early and increase your odds of winning. So spring into action and get yours today. Check our Facebook page, Friends of Hospice Computer, for details, or call 232-0859. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
Dean, as the president of this organization, who are some of the committee members?
Okay, Earl, let me just go through some of them. Of course, we have Hasan Durham, who is the vice president. We have Alexandra Duncan, she's the secretary. Emmanuel Faria, he's the treasurer. And we also have John Tucker, and we also have Charlotte Marley Simons. And that is that makes up our committee. We are a committee. We have a charity, which our charity number is 1016, and we're called the Former Cup Match Players Officials Association. Our mission is to, of course, to assist former cup match players through health or through financial need. The second is to assist the youngsters, any youngster that is looking to further their education in cricket. We want to make sure that we assist them and show them that we care. But the third one ties into all of it, is we want to preserve the legacy of not only cup match, but also the former cup match players. We want to preserve that legacy. So our initial goal is we want to work along with both clubs. We want to make sure that we have this working relationship, with the clubs, and we're willing to work along with them and do our part and do the best that we can actually go ahead and do. Andre had gone ahead and mentioned early on about the membership. One of the membership right now, we're actually working on some of the logistics of the, paying membership and everything like that. But we have some upcoming events, and we have some initiatives that are in line. But our annual events, and we're just going to read some of the things that we really want to go ahead and do, is our annual events is going to be a Legends Night, where we have a few of the legends, and they're going to speak. But like I said, due to COVID, we have to be very careful. The week of Cup Match, also, we want to have a display memorabilia at a location. And another one is a golf tournament. We've had two previous golf tournaments. This is when we wasn't an association, we wasn't a charity, we was a foundation. And so our recipients was for Craig Prockel's daughter, and also we had Mark Jennings. We went ahead and assisted him with, of course, with some medical expenses. So the other one is we want to looking to have a Legends game, and definitely an honorary recognition. And along with this, we also we want to have this working book to present to the Cup Match players. But that's our annual events. The upcoming events right now, I'm just spitting off. The upcoming events that we have is an educational engagement, and we want to present this to the schools. This is a document that should be sent out before the end of the week. We want to present this document to the schools, and it talks about the history of Cup Match and what it means to former players. So this is a document that's going to be sent out to the middle schools, and we're hoping that the teachers will take it on board and introduce the game and what it means to the significance of Cup Match, from our point of view. The other thing that's upcoming is meet and greet for former players. What we want to do is go around to pick up the former players and, sit off, have a cup of tea with them, have a photograph with them, and just to let them know that we care about them. So that's something that's going to happen. The biggest thing is the database membership that we're really, really trying to get it drive for the players to send in their information so we can build this database, so we can reach out to our players. So having events, especially, driving, it could be a picnic, it could be a Legends Night, it could be those things, but bringing the players together. Prior to Cup Match, you'll be hearing about this, a photo competition. Whereas if you have a photograph of, it could be a student, it could be anyone. If you have a photograph of a Cup Match player or former player in action or not in action, and you send it in to our Instagram and our Facebook, then you could win a prize. So we do have some things down the pipeline. We're really, really trying our best. COVID, as Hasan, mentioned early, has halted things, but the committee, and I'm so grateful for the committee, is that they've continuously been supportive. They've pushed on. We've continuously had meetings throughout the whole year. It's almost been 2 years now. They went ahead and assisted and pushed to get us across to get charitable status, and that was a bit of a struggle. But we were able to go ahead and apply for our status again. So this is our second year running now to get our status, but we really, really, really want to do this. And I'm speaking for the behalf of our committee. It's just that we're so grateful for this opportunity to go ahead and try our best to serve, the former members. And it's also, like I said, to work along with the clubs.
Definitely. Well,
yeah.
Before we finish up, I want you guys to kind of relive one of the best moments of your time playing Cup Match, to give people a sense of what it was like for you. Because whenever I hear you guys talk, and if it's a game that I've been at, you kind of remember it for yourself, but getting it from the person that's actually involved in it, I think that's the best way to understand what was going on at the time. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Tucker. Give us a sense of something that happened in Cup Match that you would never, ever forget. I know you just talked about your third bowl, but it's got to be some other things.
Well, yeah, now I'll never forget him. Another opportunity I had, Philip Smith, Buster Smith's son, he was playing for St. George's there. And I was feeling on the boundary with the cottages, the little cottage there on the northern side of the field. And he had played soccer with PAC, and we were good friends. And he hit this ball. I can't remember who. I think it was Code Trotbull. And he hit it right in the palm of my hand. I ran up to him. I hugged him. I said, "Boy, this is one you'll never forget." And I ain't gonna forget that I caught you. Get cracking. We had a good laugh, but like I said, we were good friends, and no doubt he stood out. But before I go off, I would like to congratulate Dean and his committee on what they have accomplished thus far. I was one of the original members many years ago, and we tried to become a registered charity, and the previous government shut it down. And funny thing, I was a member of another registered charity and used their bylaws and rules and regulations and presented it to the Cricket Association committee, and they used it, but the other government just shut it down, and it was very unfortunate. And some of the early members was Eugene Buckwoods, Joe Bailey, Sayed Brown. There was quite a few others who were very keen, but each time we took a step forward, another organization pulled us back. But I congratulate Dean and his team on his perseverance of getting ahead, and I wish him all the best.
Definitely. Let's go to you, Doc.
You guys know what mine is. What was it? 1992 when Clarky Trot threw that ball in.
It was 96. Doc, you didn't have to go there.
I can't remember 96.
It was 96, Doc.
96. Thank you, Hasan. I'm talking about 1992. You remember? You played, right?
No, I'm gonna get the same story.
Anyway,
Earl, I think that's enough for the show.
Time to end it, Dean.
Because you know why I said? Because that was my second victory in beating St. George's. So that put the icing on the cake for me. I think I retired right off of that game, I think.
Yeah, you laugh.
Well, do we have to go to Hussey? Because he said the same.
I'm going to tell you from my point of view, though.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to try to make it quick. So earlier in the innings, I had taken 7 wickets, and I think we needed like 250, 270 something runs to win. So Albert and Trady gave us a good start. So let's fast forward towards the end of the game. Doc and Roger Trott was in. The BNE needed, it was like the last over.
Yep.
And I'm next. So if you do it, you was nervous, Dean, and you're first up next. And I'm there, I'm standing up, I'm walking around, I'm sitting down, I'm standing up, I'm walking around. I'm thinking, what am I going to do if I go up there, right? So thankfully, Doc and Roger Trott took us over the line, but that's the most nervous that I'm ever been in my life, period. Because I mean, this was like 13 years we hadn't won the cup, and to get that close comes down to the last over. And Doc already said what happened. I think everybody knows. So I don't want to mention my mate's name again, but the rest is history. But that was my most memorable cup match because I took the 7 wickets. And I'm only the 3rd player in the history of Somerset to take 7 wickets in an inning. So I'm very proud of that. And also the fact that, that was my first victory, it was Doc's last victory, and my first victory. So it's kind of like a passing on of the baton between me and Doc. And Doc, like Doc said, he played 15 straight cup matches, and so did I. So it's a lot of similarities there. But that was my best cup match. And I think that's the day that the whole Somerset community, and we had like we had a march, and Daxter was on a horse, and it was just a wonderful time. But 1996 was my best cup match and my most fond memory in cup match.
All right, Dean.
And one more, I'm sorry,
Dean. Huh?
I'm sorry, Earl. Dean, remember you took that stump up for me? I had to chase somebody around for a stump. One of the spectators came and snatched the stump just before I got there. I had to chase him down and get it. But it was a lovely time. It was perfect.
You should have saw Dean's face.
But Earl, honestly, it brings bad memories back. But I had to go I had to go therapy for about 3 weeks. And I had counseling for about 3 weeks because the thing about it, not only, and everyone keeps going on about, Clarky, the overthrow, right? But that wasn't it. I think it was everything. The thing about it was Doc Manders running down the wicket, laughing. And that was the funniest. That to me was, I couldn't believe it. Doc was running down the wicket. He knew, and I'm watching this ball go, and Doc's just laughing because him and Roger was there. So, I mean, that to me was a nightmare. And then, it's like 2 weeks out, I couldn't believe exactly what happened. But yeah, that was my nightmare. But now I think my fondest memory was the year after, which was in St. George's, on the I think it was 97. Yeah. And it was the famous ridge. The Somerset players kept saying it was Bojangles created this ridge. Remember that, Doc?
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember it. The famous ridge, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, we turned around and we won it the following year. So, but no, it's, yeah, that to me was just like, to win it the next year after that was good. But the worst for me was losing it up in Somerset, and it was just devastating. Yeah.
Those memories keep haunting us.
Oh yeah.
But the tide's about to change.
Yeah. But Earl, I tell you what, and I'm just gonna end my part. When we talk about camaraderie, right? Last evening, right? I was with Charlie, Clevie Wade, and we I think it was after Larry Cocky Steed's funeral, and we got around and we started talking about cup match. And one of the funny stories, and this is why I talk about camaraderie with old players, because I hadn't seen him in a while. And Clevie remembers the time. He says, "Charlie, do you remember the time when I threw the cup in the air for you to catch it, and you didn't even catch the cup, and the cup just basically, fell down, right?" And I think he said the arm came off the cup, so right. They had to get it repaired or whatever. But it was just those memories right there when you got together and you start laughing about certain things. So you're thinking about the best feeling in the world. How could he drop a cup, like a cup match cup? But we all laughed about it. But it's those stories that my committee, and that's the driving force. I don't know if we can actually get it on paper or people hear about these stories, but these stories are very valuable to us. And that's what we need to get the legends to talk about, not the legends, but the former players to give their stories, to give their accounts of cup match.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned our good friend Larry Cocky Steed, because Dean, there was one time where we had to go to White Hill, and we were short, and Cocky, God bless his soul, decided, he put up his hand, I'll be.
That's him.
And Somerset Bridge was on the verge of victory with St. George's. I think we needed like 15 runs. We had, Cocky was in the pavilion, the last one in the pavilion. And I don't think I've ever seen a man pray so much in all my life. He couldn't put the gloves on.
I'm telling you, man.
When the runs were scored, the most relieved man in all of Bermuda, I'm telling you now,
see him.
was Larry Cocky Steed. Never, ever forget that.
Oh yeah, that was him.
But gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, and to the committee, we look forward to working with you guys to make sure that the information is out there. And to Mr. Tucker, I want to thank you for your vision and your passion of making sure that these guys are guided and given some guidance to how to get started. And hopefully we can see that number grow of participants of former cup match players, because we have hundreds of them out here. And, it's always good to get back together and share those memories of something that took place in their match or something that they see now that can actually help the game. So again, thank you very much. And
thank
to folks,
thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr.
have a
Tucker.
good night.
Okay, thanks, guys. Mr. Tucker,
My pleasure.
have a good night.
My pleasure. go.